All right, welcome to the Big Book Compendium. This is Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. I always like to begin with a story that's relevant to what we're covering. and this is kind of a fun story. It's there was a wolf who was the baddest of the bad. He did bad things to others without conscious thought. So he was arrogant, ego-driven, and unaware. And he spent years, wasting his life chasing after things he thought he wanted. And what he didn't know was he didn't have to live that way anymore. Most of what he had been, most of what had been taught to him were lies, when he was young. And, no one is born bad, not even this wolf. And since everyone assumed, because he was a wolf, that he was bad, and he fit that bill. And one day he just came to this conclusion: he wanted to change and mend his ways and be different. And before he could know it, his eyes were open to new opportunities. He started telling the truth. He started helping others to solve their problems. The work he was doing helped him as he helped others, and he saw that doing good things was rewarding. And soon what he thought of himself being, this big bad wolf, I guess you would say it, and not worthy, dissolved. And when he started to let others into his life, a whole new world opened up. The moral to the story is everyone is useful and can be used to their full potential. We can be to our full potential when we surrender our old self and walk in a new light. There's a quote by Waldo Emerson I love, and it's one of the most beautiful compensations of this life is that no one can sincerely try to help another without helping himself. And that's pretty deep. So before we get into the chapter, it's just our purpose of life, I always thought was happiness and joy, and you chase it to that. The truth is to be useful and available to others, to help others. And the absolute truth is everyone can be great because everyone can help. And I had said this before. We work on ourselves in order to help others, but also we help others to work on ourselves. And helping others helps us. And when you help others, you're helping yourself. It's kind of like the theme of the day we're gonna see. We're gonna bring that up again when we start reading, but it is about being a trusted advisor, teacher, and motivator. And all we're doing is passing our knowledge and experience through love. That's all we're doing. And it comes with being honest, genuine, and very important to be available and be a person of our word. And of course, being true to the altruistic self, because human beings, we're hardwired to be altruistic. We're hardwired to be, unselfish, being a model example by living this selfless life and leading others to encourage, well, let me say this, leading others to encounters with God. We don't really do that. What we do is we point the way. We point the way, but we help lead. And when they're ready, and when they have that awakening, we let them soar on their own. And, sometimes it's like the eagle, the eagles, when they have they let the baby, the little eagle cracks out of the egg, and the eagle does not help it because it needs the strength to get out of the shell. Kind of like the butterfly in the cocoon thing. And what happens though is the eagles tend to rely on their mother a lot, even as they grow. And they see the mother fly back and forth, does not want to fly. But when the mother eagle knows the bird's ready to fly, it just pushes them out of the nest and they fly. And that's kind of like what happens with us. A lot of people say they're not ready to sponsor. But the truth is, no matter how bad you feel, how much pain we think we have, circumstances of life are weighing us down, helping others is the best medicine we could ever have. We're on page 94. So this is kind of, so up to the pass here is we pretty much, he kind of goes back and forth, and I'm going to explain that and explain the way I sponsor. And I'm not saying it's the right way or the only way, but the up to this point, we kind of gotten past the person admitting he's alcoholic, and sometimes they have to go back out and go on a run and get beat up to do the experiment number one, like we see on, I think it's on page 31, go to the nearest bar room side, try some controlled drinking to get full knowledge of your condition. Let's look at, so this, by this time, the way I look at it here is for me, when I explain the program of action, the guy's done the third step, and I'm going to explain the program of action. There's outline the program of action, that's 4 through 9. Explaining how we made a self-appraisal, that would be step 4. How you straighten out your past, straighten out the past is of course step 9, and why you are endeavoring to be helpful to him. So again, he makes it seem that we're breaking down 4 through 9, before we take them to the steps. And some might do that, but I want to get them underneath their genuine third step, and then I explain it to them. And sometimes, they'll ask questions, don't get me wrong, about those steps. They'll ask a few questions here and there. But, like I said, I do the third step prayer. Right after that, I give them the 4-step packet. Sometimes I have them write down a resentment, because that's second the pen is the papers when they turn their life over to the care of God. Because it's just step 3 is just a decision. And I explain to them the 4th step, how to fill it out. And I tell him or her, whoever I sponsor, to call me when they complete step 4. Or if they get stuck, which usually happens, but I don't help them, too much in the middle. Sometimes, depending on the person, I leave them alone. The ball's in their court. And, I want them to call me when they call me and they say, hey, I completed this. I like to go meet with them to make sure they don't have 2 resentments or 2 fears, or they didn't fill it out right. Sometimes, I don't like showing up to a 5th step and the 5th step doesn't happen. So I make sure I've learned my lesson there. So I set the date to do 5. I don't explain as far as how long I give them to write the 4th step. I usually give them a week to 10 days to write it. I don't know where 4 or 5 months comes in anymore. People get lost and they get away from it. The longer you take to write it, the longer you're not going to do it. And, it's unfortunate. It's like that. But I don't explain step 5 to them before, I leave it a mystery. I don't want them to understand anything in step 5 when they go in there. A little bit. I want them to kind of, unless they're a retread and they've done it before. But I want them, they're going to learn quick it's not a confession because of the other columns in there. But the truth is, it will truly get explained to them as we go through it. And I explain how, how to do that, the hour and all that stuff like that in there. But I get together with them soon after to help them, maybe after the 5th step, to go over their 8-step list, help them with that. And I explain how, to make proper amends. If needed, I give them a few examples of mine. And I also help them explain to them they're not step 10 and they can start writing daily inventory, or when stuff comes up, and then 11, and then soon after sponsoring, once they make a few amends. Back to the book. It says, it is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital spot in your own recovery, part in your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you're helping him. There it is again. Every time I sit down and work with somebody, it helps me more. And the truth is, I work, with these people to stay sober. It's not a selfish program, but part of it's saving my own ass at the same time, because I don't feel like I'm fighting anything in this anymore. I'm been doing this 22 years, and I don't think I really fought anyone or anything since about 7 months in. I haven't thought of using or drinking in, 21 years. I had little struggles at the beginning, and that was it. But the steps are made to remove that. But the thing about it is, because we are on a deep spiritual journey, is the reason why he's helping me more. We're so deep into this. We're hearing fifth steps. We're doing prayer. We're doing inventory when things come up. We're discussing it with another in step 10. We're letting it go in step 10. We're making amends. We're doing daily prayer meditation, and we're passing this on, and we're awakened. So I think it's very important to tell them, yes, you're helping me. So let's see what else it says here. Make it plain he is under no obligation to you. He's not tied to you in any way. That you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. That's my sponsor asked me, are you good on your word? And I said, yeah, which was kind of a lie at the time. But he says, if I hear your fifth step, are you going to do the same for another person? And it's the longest promise I've ever kept in my life. He says, suggest how important it is that he places the welfare of other people ahead of his own. Very important. Make it clear he is under no pressure, that he needs to see you again if he doesn't want to. And I don't tell them that, but they're not really ready. And it usually doesn't happen too often, as far as like, I could tell during a fifth step that they're just doing this because they think it's the right thing to do, rather than to save their, because they don't like their life anymore. I always ask, when I was a counselor, I used to ask guys when they would come into detox, and I would say, are you here again? Because I would see them again all the time, tons of people. I would say, are you here because of consequences, or you don't like your life anymore? And the first time they say both. And I say, no, it's got to be one. And I leave it at that. The next time, consequences. And then eventually they come in and they say, I don't like my life anymore. Sometimes they would cry. And I ask that the sponsees too. Now, when they come back again, because it's very important. He says, you should not be offended if he wants to call it off. We should not be offended if he wants to call it off. For he has helped you more than you have helped him. There it is again. So do not try to talk to him into doing this process. If he doesn't want to, but don't be forceful, and if you are, if he's not ready, you want to be his lifeline. You want that guy to call you back. I have my little, that's not one. I'll show you. I got my little AA cards here and sponsorship cards, and they just made them. It's got my name on it, phone number, and all that. And I hand it to guys. I'll be honest with you. I've had these guys call me on the phone like 7 or 8 years later and go, I got your card. And I'm like, when? Well, there's one meeting hall, which is not there anymore. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I bump into people all the time, and they're like, hey, Steve, how's it going? And I have no idea who they are. But it's kind of like the doctor, I mean, they remember us, but we don't remember the patients too often. But the ones who go through the process, we never forget them. That's the beautiful thing of this. Back to the book. If your talk has been sane, hopefully it is, quiet and full of human understanding, you perhaps made a friend. So it's not battle, time or anything like that. You perhaps made a friend. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. And that disturbs me, because my grandfather used to say, don't be worried about making people mad at meetings, because you're not doing it on purpose. You're just, like I say, I'm a recovered alcoholic. He says, it's easy to disturb the disturbed. And when it says here's maybe disturb him about the question of alcoholism, because you told him he has an allergy. You told him once he starts, he cannot stop. And he's like, oh my God, how did you know that? And then you tell him that you have a reoccurring, persistent idea of drinking, that even though you have this deadly allergy, it's not going to get you, it's going to make you drink despite no one having every single reason not to drink. Yeah, think about that. And you disturb him with that. It says, this is all the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. It's about feeling hopeless. Remember that. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions. I mean, I've hammered home the allergy obsession to people like there's no tomorrow. I've done a lot of my work at rehabs and AA and other, a bunch of different rehabs where I go in there where you can sponsor, where you're allowed to sponsor. That's kind of a dying breed. But I get, I get there and they're open to 2 and 3. They do a genuine third step prayer underneath. Sometimes there's tears, and I give them the 4-step packet. I never hear from them. When my sponsor explained to me when I first started, don't take it personal. They're just not ready. And I would be like, really? And he goes, yeah, they're just not ready. But they admit they're alcoholic, but they're not ready. They're not ready. They might have a desire to stop drinking. They may have been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous for 15 years, drinking on a desire. But what happens to them is that they got to be ready for the just transformation. They're not ready for a drastic self-appraisal, but a few months, maybe a few years, like the other guy, they say, I'm ready, because they're desperate. I bump into some years later that I wanted not sponsoring at all. And they're just like, hey, when you explained that allergy to me, that changed everything. And I kind of know what he meant. There's nothing like, people say there's nothing like having a mind full of recovery and a body full of drugs or alcohol. There's nothing like having a mind full of the awareness of the obsession and allergy and going and drinking again. That's insanity. Let's see what else it says. It says your candidate may give you reasons why you not need to follow to follow all the program. This is not cafeteria style. Remember that. You follow it like it does in the book. And it says he may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning, which requires discussion with other people. Oh, I can't tell you my bad stuff, the worst stuff I've ever did, and it's nothing more than you've done or you've heard other people do. But they'll do that. Do not contradict such views. I mean, don't tell him, okay, tell him you once felt as he does. Tell him the truth, honesty, rigorous honesty. But you doubt whether you would have made progress had you not taken action. It's vitally important. And what I always say to people is, all I know without this program, I wouldn't be here. Look what it says next. On our first visit, tell him. So now he's back to the first visit. So it's kind of jumped around a little bit. Tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him a copy of your book. So, before I got continuous sobriety, I went to meetings, sat in my hands, and I didn't do anything and never took action. I thought all the people that spoke at the meetings were just do-gooders. I mean, as far as the people that were big book thumpers and stuff. The truth was, I was miserable. I was restless, irritable, discontent. I was, high anxiety, easily pissed off and not satisfied, fighting an obsession, very suicidal when I was dry. And I tell the guys or women, you can either stay feeling the way you are, or you can try these steps. And I leave it up to them. You will take people to, well, let me say this. I took more people to the first 3 steps than I have sober. And what I mean by that, I have a book somewhere in here, a big book where up to page 63, it looks all dirty and the rest of the book is clean. That was an old sponsor book. I would get so many people up to the 3rd step, but that's our job, is to get them there quick. Get them on their knees. It doesn't mean they're going to go past that. I mean, I don't know how many 3rd step prayers I've done. I've heard, I mean, I don't like putting numbers on things, but because of rehabs and everything, I probably heard 500 5th steps, but that's not how many people are sober. Not even a fraction of that. It's just the nature of this beast. Let's go back 95. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. Again, don't push him. Don't call him later. Don't drive by his house at midnight because you haven't heard from him in 3 days. Oh, I better call him. If the guy's drinking again, he doesn't want to hear from you. It says, if you do stay, let him steer the conversation in a direction he likes. Sometimes a new man is anxious to proceed at once. I love the eager ones. And you may be tempted to let him do so. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later, he may say you rushed him. This is very important right here, to tell them, to tell someone of the time frame that that you lay out for them and what you're looking for and why. If you're going to do these steps, tell them the history, of a little bit of the early people and how they left detox with their amends list in their hands. People who wrote this book, I mean, Bill and the people who helped them, they left detox with their amends list in their hands. This was not a monthly, or 2-month thing or 6-month thing. Back to the book. It says, you will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusader reform. Never talk down to an alcoholic from a moral or spiritual hilltop. Don't be the bleeding deacon, I guess you call that. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection. Show him how they work for you. Offer him friendship and fellowship. Tell him if he wants to get well, you will do anything to help. A few lessons back, I talked about the simple kit of spiritual tools I talk about in 25. And once you put, those spiritual tools at their feet, it's not up to you to, they put them up in their hands. We know where they're at. I offer it to them, and then it's up to them. Like I said, the ball's in their court. If he is not interested in your solution, the action steps 4-9, if he expects you to act only as a banker for his financial difficulties or nurse for his sprees, driving the meetings and all this stuff that supposedly sponsors are supposed to do, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind. And that happens sometimes. This he may do after he gets hurt some more. If he's sincerely interested and wants to see you again, ask him to read the interval. About the book, I mentioned this last week, I give them, when I meet a guy in a meeting, I give him my card. I say, read Doctor's Opinion and call me. That's my willingness test. And then I'll say, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to read Doctor's Opinion. Can you read that? If they read it, we'll get together. And then I just kind of take them through bullet points. Back to the book. After doing that, he must decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He should not be pushed or prodded, his wife and friends, if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. It's interesting because early in the book, step 1 talks about conceding in our innermost selves, the rockaholic. And then they tell us that God is within us in step 2. So it's vitally important to always remember, this is an inward journey. This is an inner journey, not an outer journey. We've been looking for God and happiness and solutions to our problem outside of ourselves for years. The right therapist, the right church, the right friends, the right wife, girlfriend, or whatever. Anything outside ourselves. And we pursue stuff we thought we lacked. This is an inner journey. If he thinks he can do the job in some other way or prefers some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his own conscience. I do that too. Yeah, go for it. I love this right here. We have no monopoly on God. We merely have an approach that works with us. Take that simple approach with them. This is just all this book is something that worked for them. And it should work, and it always, and for those who apply it, it works for others. But point out that we alcoholics have much in common, and that you would like, in any case, to be friendly. Let it go at that. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. This is very important right here. Why we don't chase. Check this out, or why we don't focus on one person who may not want to do this. I always have a few people I'm working with because not all of them will do it. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept eagerness what you have to offer. Here it is. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who will not work with you. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced he cannot recover by himself. and here's an underlying part right here, to spend too much time on any one situation, any one person, is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be healthy. One of our fellowship failed with his first half dozen prospect, that was Bill. He often says if he had continued to work with them, he may have deprived many others who since recovered. So there's no reason to convince a person who doesn't want to work with you to work with you. There are other people out there. You know, I'm always prepared that a person is not going to do the work. And that's just because my experiences. The first year was torture on me when guys wouldn't want to do the work, and you get kind of used to it. You know, I always raise my hand. I never say my plate's full, even if I got 3 footsteps coming up, which hasn't happened in a while, but I try to get 1 a month. You know, and I'm always, if I can explain someone step 1, you know, I got 3 guys on step 1, I work with them all together. But I always have a backup plan. There's always someone else. But I want people that are eager enough to call and say, I want this. Suppose now you are making your second visit to a man. He has read his volume and says he prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had an experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you are available if he wishes to make a decision and tell his story, but do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. Now, here's the thing is, at this point, I don't think it's the first visit. It's usually the second or third visit. But if they do step 2 and they say, I'll meet with you and the next day, I try to do the first 3 steps in a week. Then they're showing up. They're saying they want to do it. That's you can just tell. So, right, this next part, this is good for anyone in recovery and not recovery. It says he may be broken homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little financial assistance, but you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. That can be really dangerous, and I've seen it happen. He's gonna get more into that. And you're also enabling the person to burn his gas a little bit longer. Perhaps you will want to take a man into your home for a few days. I don't recommend that at all. I don't recommend it. I had a roommate that did that a bunch of times, and things disappeared and stuff. But you check out what it says. Be sure you use discretion. Be certain he will be welcome into your home, in your family, and that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Because hey, a lot of people are running around the streets and they get to AA and they've been homeless for a while or living in a shelter, and you get a sponsor and you sponsor them and they're like, hey, come stay with me for a few days. Look what it says. Permit that and you only harm him. You will be making it impossible for him you'll make it possible for him to be insincere. You'll be aiding his destruction rather than helping. That's why it harms him. He needs to stay in that place. When people walk in Alcoholics Anonymous and they're really doing this for real. They're not going to try any of this stuff. The ones who aren't sure, yet, they show up in AA and they're like, hey, this is kind of cool. I'm not homeless. I've been living in a shelter, and you get him as a sponsee and you're like, oh, come live with me. He's not going to, they have motivation when they get sober, super motivation. Go back when you started, the motivation you had, right? The motivation you had, it was deep inside of you, and that motivation, you don't want to get distracted. I had a friend that I came home, and I mentioned a second ago, I came home one time, and my roommate, without asking me, brought this guy into our home who I'd seen in and out of AA for quite some time. And I had like 2 years at the time. And I'm like, dude, you can't have this guy here, man. He's just using you. Oh no, he said this, he said that. Well, the next day his wallet was gone, and stuff like that happens. I mean, the thing is people are always looking, been to jail, been to the shelter. Hey, they call it 3 hots in a cot. That's what they're looking for, 3 hot meals in a cot. And they'll hustle. That's, some people don't take it personal. That's what they do. My nephew's doing it right now to my whole family, and he doesn't probably calling me because I'll laugh, not laugh, but I'll just say, hey, no, sorry, dude. And he's out there on the streets being a junkie. It's what happens. It says never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. So always make sure you're doing the right thing. Helping others is the foundation stone of recovery. So remember, we did the arch, and the foundation is step 1. And that has to be only step that has to be 100% solid. The foundation has to last forever. The cornerstone goes into that. The keystone's on top, and the other steps build into it. The foundation stone is like the cornerstone. It's the last. It's got to be strong. It's got to be as strong as the foundation, the regular foundation. The foundation is stone because it's going to support everything else like the cornerstone, right? Very important. So here he's going to beautifully describe the altruistic life. And some people think this sounds overwhelming when he describes this, or it's a pipe dream or pie in the sky stuff. This is right on. He says a kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to act at the Good Samaritan every day. Every day. There's no days off in recovery. I bet sponsees that say, what about inventory and sponsoring? When can I take a week off from it and all that? I go, that's up to you. But we made a decision to turn our life to care of God. The Good Samaritan every day, if needed be. It may mean a loss of many nights' sleep. That can happen. Great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money in your home, counseling frantic wives, relatives, immovable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. Your phone may jingle at any time during the night. That happens a lot. Your wife may sometimes say she feels neglected. A drunk may smash your furniture in your home. I've never let that happen. Or burn a mattress. You may have to fight with him. Remember, there's no rehabs at this time. So imagine these guys trying to sober these people up. You may have to fight him if he is violent. Sometimes you have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time you may have to, I don't think we can do that too much anymore. Another time you may have to send for the police or ambulance. I've had to do the ambulance thing a few times. Okay, and that's when detoxing people. Occasionally you will have to meet such conditions. I mean, Good Samaritan. I've worked with guys on Super Bowl Sunday where my wife's, done all this food and it's all laid out, and I get called out and I got to go help a guy and she never argues about it. She's like, I understand. And then there's other times where, I just say, I'm not going to be able to make the party or the wedding or whatever it is, because this comes first. My conversation with my wife before we got married 18 years ago or 19 years ago was recovery has to come first before you and my future kids. And she's like, she's all, stop. I know that, and I'm lucky to have that. She never questions me working with guys or hearing a fifth step. She actually we actually do our schedules and I'm laying that stuff out. She knows why I'm doing this and what I get from it. And she'll tell me, you need to go do inventory, or you need to go hear a fifth step, because we have a calmer house. I believe I'm a better husband, a better person, because I've learned this altruistic way. And I owe so much to carrying the message. But I've given guys the rides to detoxes. That's what I offer them when they call me drunk. You want to go to detox? I'm not an expert getting people off of drugs and alcohol. I don't know if I'm an expert with the steps, but I have a knowledge of the steps to take them through it. That's where I can help them, but not until they're detox. But the coolest thing is that I love is walking into a room and seeing your sponsee, prospect, or protege, where you want to call them, taking a guy through the steps, looking in his eyes the same way he looked at you, and when they say thank you, I mean, the truth is I say thank you to them. They help me more. You know, the most beautiful thing with the sponsee is when you, as there's a point that will happen when you look into their eyes, and because once you know this light and this awakening, you feel inside you, you know what it is. And when you look into their eyes and you can finally see that the light, the same light is in their eyes that burns in you. And you're just like, that makes me want to cry when you talk about that. 98, first paragraph. It is not a matter of giving that is a question, but when and how to give. This often makes a difference between failure and success. Between failure and success. So it's very important stuff here. I'm sorry, I just messed up. Matter of giving, but the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than God. Very important there. Think what that just said. Right? How many sponsors out there give the impression that the sponsor has to be dependent upon them, reliant upon them? That is bullshit. God, it's about God. Look what he says. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. That happens too. I can't go into rehab now. You know, my wife, the dog got sick. You know, or this happened or that happened. I see Jason laughing in there. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. The thing is, you know, I've gotten guys from other sponsors and they said, okay, am I supposed to call you every day at 6 a.m. and then at noon and then at 6 o'clock at night every day, right? And I'm like, no, please don't call me at 6 a.m. And then I realized that that's what sponsors do. Call me every day and this and that. And if you ask them, well, how much longer do I need to call you? That's another 6 months of doing it. And it's like, you know, I mean, think about what I just said. We simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people and depends on God. Now let's talk about meetings. What's one of the famous sayings? You people keep me sober. I love all you people in here, but I'm sorry, that's not the way it is. And if there's an AA group, you're talking a group of powerless people. 0 times 0 is 0. You know, meetings are great, but meetings on their own is not going to work. You have to do meetings and do this process, because eventually you get a wall. Look what it says next. Burn the idea into his conscience of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trusts in God and clean house. He also said the only condition, trust God and clean house. The only prerequisite there, trust God and clean house. Trust God and do 4 through 9 and see what happens. There's not one person I've ever sponsored or I've watched be sponsored that doesn't have something, doesn't change in them, even if they don't stay sober. Look what it says now, the domestic problem. There may be divorce. There may be divorce, separation, or just strained relations. When your prospect has made such a reputation as he can to his family, he has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living. He should proceed to those principles into action at the home. So you have a spiritual awakening, you're practicing kindness and everything, the principles, you know, do it at home. You know, I've heard people say, they talk about making a living amends. I'm not all into that living amends, because you should, you know, I heard a guy say, oh, I go to my dad's house every day to feed him dinner. That's a living amends. And I'm like, no, it's practicing the principles in all your affairs. That's doing what you should be doing anyways. Living amends can get really tied down. It's really our excuse not to make an amends. But yeah, okay, that's a whole other, I think I already did a spiel on that before. You know, that is if he is lucky enough to have a home Though his family may be at fault in many respects, he is not concerned about that. He should be concentrating on his own spiritual demonstration. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. In many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are to be expected. If he's persisted for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. The most incredible people discover that they have a basis which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. These can be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness. I've sponsored guys when I go to their house, it's turmoil, and it's not the kid's fault. It's not, the wife's fault. I know it's what the guy brought there. And years of drinking will burn people, we put them, we put these people in a condition, whether we like it or not, and whenever I have a problem, it's something wrong with me. No one can make me mad, only I can make myself mad. I can't blame it on the other person. It says that's a spiritual axiom, it's in 12 and 12. When there's something wrong with another, there's really something wrong with me. It's like the only thing that could possibly be wrong with anyone in this universe is my thinking. I want to blame others, but that's why we discover, right? But when we start living at home, if we just actions speak louder than words. Preach the gospel and court, and occasionally use words. Be the good Samaritan, and they'll see the change in you over time. So after they've seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time provided. However, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what others says or does. Of course, he will fall much below this standard many times, but he must try to repair the damages immediately, not later, not in 6 months, immediately. At least we pay for the penalty by a spree. So he's saying there, with our family, we see them every day, and it just drives me crazy when a guy goes, "Oh yeah, I went to go work with a guy," make amends to the first person you see after the fifth step, which would be his wife and kids and all that. Go home and do it. And then 3 days later, they're like, "Oh, well, I couldn't do it because of this, this, and that, and this happened." And, I watch, people wait way too long, and they're living with the person, and then they're fighting, and then it's like they're already buying their spree. Here's if there be divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. Like, don't rush it. The man should be sure of his recovery. So really make sure you're on solid ground. The wife should fully understand his new way of life. So there's 2 conditions they just gave us there. If a couples that get back together, they got divorced or separated, they should, and that's for people that are in recovery and aren't. The man should be sure of his recovery, that he's doing recovery. The wife should fully understand his new way of life, fully understand it, like what he's doing. And if the old relationship is to resume, it must be a better basis. Since the former did not work, boom, there it is. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. Sometimes it is best interest of all concerned that the couple remain apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. But sponsors will tell you that you can't, you got to break up with her. I took over a guy one time, and the sponsors fired him because he wouldn't get a divorce. But it says we let God be the final judge. So it goes against the principles of that. Let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. And when the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties. I love that. That's the whole third eye consciousness thing. When you know. It says, let an alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. You hear that a lot. I can't do this until I get my family back. This isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect, here it is again, Mind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. Wow, there it is again. It's not dependent on other people. It's dependent on his relationship with God. Wow. We have seen men and women get well whose families have not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family came back too soon. That happens a lot. So it's very important stuff here. We can't put the family ahead of recovery. And let's go back and remind ourselves we have a deadly disease. We have an obsession that doesn't care about reason. It doesn't care about your kids. You will use if you don't put recovery first. And then you can have all the things you love, everything you like. We watch, we all seen this all the time. If the guys do what, or women do the 3-step shuffle, like Jim in the book, they don't expand their spiritual life. They get the girl back, they get the kids back, they get the great job, they get the fancy car, the lowrider or whatever they, look at, and you ask them how they're doing. I got a new boat in the car, but they're miserable. And they do the 3-step shuffle and they go back out. Again, dependent on our relationship with God, reliance upon God. In step 3, we turn our will and life over to the care of God, not our family, not our friends, not anyone else. And we, do 4 through 9, and we stay connected in 10 and 12. Here's some more awesome stuff. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. What he's saying there is not you and the sponsor running, holding hands, running through the, someplace. They're talking about both you must be doing this process, spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, when we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands, there he's talking about it again, were better than anything we could have planned. Amen. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new, wonderful world. Look at this. No matter what your current circumstances, boom, sums it up there. No matter what it is. Big Book talks about we miss the beauty of the forest because of the ugliness of one of its trees. After a while, you just don't see that no more. You see the beauty in everything. The most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life is sitting down with another and doing this work. I mean, that's what puts the spark in my eye and keeps my heart lit. And I can tell you there's nothing on this planet like hearing a fist up and watching a person, light bulb, awakening, whatever you want to call it, happen right in front of you. To witness their ideas, emotions, and attitudes change. And all of a sudden, this new set of emotions and attitudes slowly or fastly dominates them. To see God awaken in them. So it's an honor for me to hear another's footstep. And the fact that person who barely knows me to tell me their darkest stuff, and they're going to tell me, hey, I'm going to tell you something I never told another person. It's like, wow. I don't think that person would ever say that unless they saw peace in me and trusted me. The same, I remember going to the shrink for years, and I was always intimidated by the guy, so I never wanted to say anything because I never saw peace. I didn't sit there and go, I don't see peace in this man's eyes. But when I looked at another alcoholic that was offering his principles, I was like, let's do this, because I saw it. There's no such thing as a bad day with doing this at all. I sit down and do the work with another, they're helping me more than I'm helping them. It's a broken record today, but I get paid spiritually instead of paying the price like I always did by not sponsoring. I have an extremely bad back, and some days I have good days and bad days. But I don't have back pain when I sit down and work with the guy. I don't have, the migraine goes away. It's gone. It's like I've had, when I hear a person's story, I'm not worried about my bills or my problems. And it just takes me out of that spotlight and lets another person have it. And that's when people don't sponsor, they're not willing to do that. It takes me completely out of self. back to the book. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participation in their quarrels. Don't get involved in that, because the wife will call you up and say, you don't believe what he said to me. And then they finally talk to their wife, and then they don't want to be around you ever again. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do so. But urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment and jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. That's amen. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his recovery, his sobriety. I don't work with a person, in their family, but I see them treating their family badly or vice versa. And I say, that goes for the sponsee or a friend. I say, hey, you gotta step back, dude. And I tell them, with these defects are not going to go away overnight. Just be patient, look for growth. If you have been successful solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how this was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story on how you and your family settled your own difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. While I don't give them relationship advice, I do share them how I overcame difficulties in relationships. That's it. So the next part we covered already, and it's about being spiritually fit, and we covered that with step 10. And if we can go anywhere alcoholics aren't supposed to go, the whoopee parties and all that stuff. So we're going to go to page 102. If you want to read about that, just follow up on a later date. But we're on 102. So this tells you what our job is now. Remember on page 62, it says God is the principal and we are the agents, right? And I always tell people, I wanted to be the director. And remember, like the actor, remember the actor in the book, he wants to be the actor and the director. When God becomes the director, he is the principal and we're the agents. We're now working for God, right? And with any job you do, how well have you represented the company? Look at your past life. How well did you represent any type of relationship with God? Now it's our time to represent the company, so to speak. 102, your job, here's our job now, is to be a place where we may be of maximum helpfulness to others. You got AA, you got rehabs, you got everything. So never hesitate to go anywhere we can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit most sore responders on such an errand. I've gone to some crazy places. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives. God will keep you unharmed. Amen. So I started working with others when I had 4 months of sobriety and never looked back. And when I started doing these steps 22 years ago, I said, I don't want to think of my past ever again. I don't want to reflect on the things I was addicted to. I never want to talk about the drugs. I never want to, hang out with old using friends, But most of all, I would say I never want to, go to a church and get in line and get free food again. I never want to see the people I used to run with. I never want to, set foot in a jail or prison or rehab or detox again. Well, in the last 22 years, where did I spend most of my time? Jails, prisons, and rehabs and detoxes. And as far as the churches go, so I have 2 different food pantries that I volunteer myself as. I love doing that. It is so rewarding. And I got a few sponsees out of that without even, they recognized me from either meetings or the rehabs. The dark past is a great position I have. It tells us that, as for like shunning or avoiding people you used to use with, well, first of all, we got to make amends, but never, one day they may ask for your help. I've had guys who were flat out dope fiends and gone made amends to them. And then I bump into them somewhere else and, hey man, I wanted to ask you, how did you beat this thing? And then they're sober today. I'm going to read a quote by Emmett Fox from the Sermon on the Mount. And listen to this. The quickest way to spread the truth, this that we'll call the program, is by living the life yourself. Then people will notice the change in you as they see improved health and prosperity in your life and happiness shining in your face. They will come around of their own accord, begging you to share your secret. That's just, I just said, I was like, so right on. Service is one of the things that makes no sense until you do it. It's like telling a person what it's like to be in love who's never been in love. But it's nothing like carrying this message. Look what it says next. And I want to tell you something is Ann Smith walked into her house and they had 3 guys living there. And Dr. Bob put a big bottle of alcohol on top of the freezer. And Ann freaked out and says, "You can't have that there. You see it and they'll see it." And he goes, "If they can't be around alcohol, they'll never be able to be around it." He says, "Many keep liquor in our homes. We often carry green recruits to hangovers. Some of us still serve it to friends, provide they're not alcoholic. People can come to my house and they can drink. My wife's not an alcoholic. There's booze in my refrigerator. She has a drink once every 3 years, it seems like, but she's got friends or bunco group and they have a few beers and stuff. But people come to my house and drink, provided they're not alcoholic. No drugs allowed, but provided they're not alcoholic." But some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question. 103. We feel that each family, in the light of our own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience shows that little attitude is not helpful to anyone. Yeah, I never understand people that in recovery that act like they hate alcohol, and not supposed to love it, but I don't know. I think that's what we're supposed to do. Every new alcoholic looks for the spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds out we're not witch burners. A spirit of intolerance may repel alcoholics whose lives would have been saved had it not been for such stupidity. We should not even do the cause of temperate and moderate drinker any good, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. Someday, we hope Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public, I think they have, to a better realization of the gravity of the alcohol problem. But we shall be of little use if our attitude is one of bitterness or hostility. Drinkers do not stand for it. After all, underline this part, it's italics. After all, our problems were our own making. We discovered that in 4 and 5. Bottles are just a symbol. Remember, alcohol is a symptom of our problems. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. Of course, it says even alcohol in step 10. We have to. So I used to always ask, like back in 96 and stuff like that, when I was homeless and drink, why me? Why I was cursed with this life? Why am I still alive? After I started working with others with, that 4 months, and I never looked back, I didn't ask why me anymore. I knew why me. I believe God had a plan, and that plan was helping others. And for me, my goal every day is to help one person. If people come to this book study and I've helped one person, that's all that matters. Just one to find their way home. And if I do that, I've done my job. And that's the beauty of sponsorship and carrying this message. I continue to experience the magnificent reality of the 12 steps. And that's simply passing it on to others. I say it's a highlight of my life, the top of my resume. But to take another through the same action and watch them get results is just so awe-inspiring, and they say thank you. But I truly believe that God helps those who help others. As for my sponsor, I've tried to thank my sponsor all the time. for his wisdom and his caring, his love, his encouragement he's given me. And it's no exaggeration when I say that man helped save my life. He would say, always say, it's not me, it's God. But I do not know where I'd be without his strong, selfless, giving, honest, loving person in my life. But he helped me not through my resentments, but to see what created them. And he never said, let's do the steps. He just said, let's talk. He never said, let's do your 10 steps, let's talk. And he always tells me the truth with love. And that's the thing I learned too. And, you know, he never said, call me every day. He says, please don't. But I still talk to him, you know, quite a bit. But, you know, the greatest thing he ever told me was, like I said at the beginning, I will hear your fifth step as long as you hear someone else's. You know, you hear people say this is a selfish program. And a spiritual lifestyle can never be a selfish lifestyle. I mean, there's nothing good about selfishness. It's just a spiritual lifestyle for very selfish people. It's built on the foundation of helping others. You know, no amount of fortune, I believe that no amount of fortune or fame or success or beauty or intelligence will ever give you the sense of awakening gratification that you get from helping another person through this program, to be able to help whenever you can. But you will receive more than you've ever imagined. I'm going to close with, I like to write a lot. And over the years, I've always had 10 important things to remember with sponsorship. So I'm going to go over these 10 real quick. I'm not going to explain them, but number one is you have a big book you can sponsor. Number two, through your personal victory, you have the recipe for helping others. Number three, if you do not pass this message to others, you will lose whatever you've gained. 4, to overcome low self-esteem, you must do a esteemable acts. And there's no greater esteemable act than being a sponsor. 4, the dark past is not just the key to the future, but also the key to life and happiness for others. 6, the condition for permanent recovery is being sponsored. The condition for permanent recovery is not about being sponsored. It's about sponsoring. The only unsuccessful sponsor, that's number 7. The only unsuccessful sponsor is one who does not sponsor. 8, it's not the messenger, it's the message. Very important. It's not the messenger, it's the message. 9, we will never really come to truly have a relationship with God until we take another through these steps. And lastly, 10, we cannot play God, because God is the only one who can wake the dead. So next week, I'm going to kind of like show you guys how I sponsored through this book and give some, you know, just kind of like I did today, but in a broader perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording while we're in discussion.